Hello there, sword fans. Today I'm going to talk about this. It is a baby sword, or a knife, as some of you call it, but it is a knife I'm familiar with and one that I would like to talk about. People have asked me a little bit for knife-related content, and while I focus primarily on swords, or almost exclusively on swords, I do like knives. There are just a number of knife reviewers who are more eloquent and knowledgeable than I am, so I don't know that I'm necessarily adding much to the conversation. But by request, I will make a knife review, and I can't think of a better one to start with than this one that has been with me for a very long time, the Buck Alpha Hunter, or a version of it that is discontinued. Now, this is the 694T. There is a newer version of the Alpha Hunter out, which looks a little bit more spacey and like they've improved on some of the design here. There are some pros and cons to this knife that I have enjoyed for many years, but am well aware of its failings, and I can talk a little bit about them. For context, this was a knife that I got very early, well, I don't know, decades ago anyway, or at least a decade ago, probably more than that. Anyway, I got this knife a long time ago, and to me, at the time, it represented a relatively expensive knife. Now, I know to knife collectors, knife users, people that watch me spend thousands of dollars on swords, $100 for a knife and me bitching about it might seem strange. But to me, spending $100 on a tool that I use on a knife was like the end of the world. So this was an expensive knife, and to me was also kind of a frustrating thing because I wasn't aware of reviews and YouTube and all of that kind of stuff at the time, and I'm not sure what would have been out there at the time when I bought this anyway, because there was just nowhere that I could hold it. I could see if I actually liked using it. There was nowhere to look at it. I could see pictures online. That was about all I could do. And I actually ended up buying this one secondhand to save a few dollars. I don't mind sharpening a knife. I bitch about it with swords, but I don't mind sharpening a knife. And as soon as I start using them, I end up needing to sharpen them anyway because I cut thick cords and cables and metal and whittle and poke and drop them. And so if I have to put an edge on one, then I'm not particularly bothered by it. So anyway, I bought this secondhand to save a few dollars, but I do recall them being new between $100 and $130 or $120, and then there was a rosewood version, which I really liked a little bit more, that retailed or sold for around $120 to around $150. I couldn't justify the extra expense to get scales that I thought were pretty looking and something that might age a little better. So I ended up with this one. I want to say I paid around $100 for it because I was bitching and moaning about it in my brain for quite some time. But I did know at that time that my preference for fixed blade knives were something a little bit smaller. I'd had larger knives, and something around a 3 to 4 inch blade was my preference with a drop tip, and I liked a big belly. So the things that I typically do, honestly, are opening boxes, picking my fingernails, but out and about, cutting bags, cutting cardboard, cutting little bits of brush down. If every now and again I go camping or something like that, then this is the preferred tool. Big knives are not necessarily something I mind either, but I usually, as a sword guy, have a big type sword around with me anyway, so something small is my preference. And I knew that already. This fit the bill, and when I got it in my hand, I was happy anyway with the size and how it fit me personally. What I wasn't necessarily enthusiastic about was the sheath. I did have to do some modifications to get that in a likable state, but I'll talk about that later. Anyway, other bits and features of the knife that are maybe worth pointing out, apart from that it was around $100 when you could get one. You can't really find it now new, but you might be able to find new old stock knives. This was a pretty prolific knife. You can probably still find them secondhand if you really want one, though I don't know if you'll want one when I'm done talking about it. Anyway, you can find them, and I'm sure you can find better ones too. The point is, though, that they were around about $100. I think it's some sort of stainless steel. I'm not a big guy on the steel. I know it's much more, not that it isn't popular to talk about in the sword community as well, but in the knife community, I know knife steel is a bigger deal, and buck knives never really had anything, or at least the 420 steel was not a particularly glamorous steel, and I think that's what it is in here. Now, to me, as long as the steel is sufficient for the task, I'm not particularly bothered by it, and I'm not overly enthusiastic about spending a substantial amount more to get a fancy steel that does marginally better in specific circumstances. I'm pretty hard on the knives. I drop them, I cut metal thing. No matter what I do, it seems, with any kind of steel in a knife, it will diminish relatively rapidly with some of the dumber tasks that I do. And so paying a substantial amount more when I have to put an edge on it anyway, just it doesn't necessarily seem like a value to me very often. Though nowadays some exotic steels that were exotic and really expensive at the time are a little bit more commonplace now. So for 40, 420, whatever steel this is probably not particularly glamorous, but it does the job. If I do soft tasks with it, it's fine. If I push it, then it diminishes pretty quickly, but 3V blades and other fancy steels also diminish quickly when you try to cut metal wires and stuff that are thick with them. Anyway, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Features of the blade: it's a pretty small blade. Dimensions and all that will be in the description down below. It has a bevel on it that transfers to a secondary bevel. It has various bits of jimping around it. It has a rubber handle. Buck probably has some sort of name for it, but it's a rubbery substance with 3 pins and various bits of jimping on it that allow you to reinforce your grip in various positions. There's a little hole drilled in it to attach a lanyard, which I've done here. And it came with a nylon coated sheath with some plastic on the inner side of it. This one came with 1 belt loop and a button on it to secure the knife. That wasn't sufficient. Personally, I like to carry them across my belly or across my back. In the summer, if I have a belt, I like to wear them across my belly in such a way that I can still bend over. Getting harder to do that as I get fatter, but that's my general preference for carry. I don't really like 1 belt loop and to kind of have it hang down. The belly carry is my preference. In the winter, though, that's not doable with a lot of snow pants and heavy gear on you. So I have this thing that I attach to it, which at one point I think was a sword belt, and I strap it onto the cutouts or the stitching that I've done with a shoelace or something like that to make the loops for my belly carry. And I can drape it across me and carry it that way, which is what I do when I'm out and about. Then it's easy to take on and off, and I can still deploy it with one hand, but I'm giving away all the goods for when I talk about the sheath. Anyway, comes with a nylon sheath, nothing particularly special. And I don't remember if it came with the lanyard or if I found some bit of paracord to attach to it, which is handy if you're working and doing stuff on a frozen lake, which is not something I frequently do. But if I'm poking away at fish or doing something on a lake, it's a bummer if you drop your knife down the hole. So wrapping it around your hand when things get cold and you get fumbly is a nice thing. I don't usually like lanyards, but on the usage knife like this, I've come to appreciate it. And so those are the general features of the knife. I find it to be a very handsome shape, and so I can talk a little bit about the fit and features and go down soup to nuts, top to bottom. So the end bit of the knife right here, this little nubbin right here, I haven't found to be particularly useful for anything. There's no pommel on it necessarily, but the end butt of the knife, I haven't used this to like whack anything or hammer anything down. And that's not to say I don't do that with other knives. Sometimes you can use your knife as a hammer, and a knife with a big butt on it, I don't mind that. This is not conducive to doing that. The rubber diminishes kind of quickly, and it's hard to hit a nail on the head with this thin bit of tang poking out. The lanyard hole is well placed, though, and I don't find it to be sharp or inconvenient, regardless of how I hold the knife or where I attach it. It's in a good spot and doesn't irritate me. The back of this tang, though, has some jimping on it, and if I hold it in kind of a reverse grip right here, I can really dig my thumb in, and it makes me feel a little bit more secure on the knife, and it doesn't bother me if I hold it in a closed fist. But if I want to get a thumb on it, why would I do that? Well, if I was using this little nubbin here to scrape a lottery ticket or something like that, or rub or use, I don't know, for whatever reason, if I wanted to hold the knife like this, I feel like I could get a little bit more purchase on it and really dictate where this little butt of the knife goes. So I like the jimping here. It doesn't irritate my hand. It's not bad. I don't find it to be uncomfortable. The scales on it are these thick rubber dealies that have over time started to feel, I don't know, like sticky, tacky, more so than they did originally. Originally they were fine and didn't have this kind of gradually disintegrating feeling that they do now. And it fits in the palm of your hand pretty well. It fills the well of your hand. It indexes well. Now, though, because they feel like they're disintegrating, it's a less pleasant experience. They diminish kind of quickly if you hit them, and that they scar. They don't crack or anything like that. I've dropped the knife a number of times. It's been left out in the cold. It may or may not have been dropped down an ice fishing hole a couple times. But the point is that the scales have held up well despite the various changes in temperature over the last decade or two. The pins are recessed, and I find that they diminish maybe a little bit more. Things tend to get caught in them, and schmutz is tough to clean out, but it's not really the end of the world. And they're contoured in such a way that they really do fill the swell of your hand, index swell, and make the knife feel very secure. So if I hold it in my hand like this, one thing I like to do is try to twist it with the other one and see if I can get the knife to turn. And the fact that I can't do that makes me really confident in the grip that I have on this knife. So if I'm whittling or prying or doing something where I'm applying a lot of pressure, I feel like I'm in control and that I'm not going to lose my grip and have the knife turn in my hand and potentially jeopardize my safety. What I don't like about it, though, is this tang that's exposed. So it's part of the charm and the appeal of the look of the knife, but it's really not very comfortable. It does lock in a little bit in the flub of my hand, so it does aid a titch in retention of the knife and really giving it that secure feeling, because the fat of my fingers are kind of wrapping around the contour of the tang and locking it in. But at the same time, it's not a comfortable grip, and when it's cold and I grab it with a bare hand, I feel that cold. And it's also just doesn't make a particularly comfortable grip. It locks in pretty well, but it gets uncomfortable there more so than on the jimping. The jimping as well, as we go up to the spine of the knife right here, is really hard, and so it will rip the skin of my thumb off if I push on it too hard. So that can be a pro and a con. If you want sturdy jimping, then if I push on this, again, my thumb is really locked in there, but if I'm really pushing on it, then it's going to take the skin of my thumb with it. It has some edges. I don't think so much that I could use it to saw, but that jimping is effective in terms of retaining your thumb. A little bit too much, it'll take the skin with you. So I wouldn't mind if that were mellowed out just a little bit. And every now and again, like you brush on something, you scratch it, and I tend to, if I grab it, sometimes I'll get the jimping more than I want it to, and that's been an irritation. Sometimes it's a little bit much. As I move up to the blade of the knife, well, I really like the shape. I like this big wide belly on the knife. I like the drop tip. If I hold it and I put my thumb on the spine, I really feel connected to the tip here, and I find it very easy to do various refined tasks where I have to use the tip to pry or poke or get in something. I feel like, despite the fact that it looks like this big stubby imposing knife that I could shove into a car door, I feel like I'm really in control of the tip and can do some fine fiddly work with it. It's got a big bevel on it and a secondary bevel that has been worsened by my sharpening over time. And if I'm not that I do a lot of feather sticking, starting fires, not my style of camping. I'm a little bit more of a glamper, but outdoor yard work and stuff, if I need to pry, cut, if I'm doing sword related stuff and need to shim down a tatami stake and sharpen it up, this does the job, and I like this big belly on the knife for doing those tasks. It's just a comfortable feeling, does all those things, and likewise, if it's clean enough to use for dinner, it's a comfortable enough knife to use it for those tasks as well. Sharpening is easy as well. It's a steel that takes an edge really well. I haven't ever had a problem putting an edge on, and I've gradually gotten better at doing it, and it holds one reasonably well. So in usage, the knife will lose an edge very quickly if I do dumb things with it. If I scrape it on a rock, if I try to sharpen it wrong, I'll lose the edge. If I try to cut cables with it, like if I try to make it through 8 coax cables at once, which maybe I've done, then I lose the edge on that. And it'll go pretty quickly on some of those items. But if I do other stuff, just general whittling, softer woods, if I am cutting meat or something like that, or cardboard, it holds up really well. It cleans really well as well, though admittedly Buck put a really shiny sheen on it, so getting around some of these edges and stuff like that, it looks a little worse for wear in the cleaning. But I haven't found it to be hard to sanitize in such a way that I'm comfortable using it for dinner, and I like the shape as a camping dinner knife as well. The scabbard, or not scabbard, the sheath, is not my cup of tea personally. So it came with, as I mentioned, one belt loop, and it's got one little clip here, which has honestly done fine. I don't have a problem with the little snap button here. It holds the knife. It's been durable. It's done all the things reasonably well. Retention in the scabbard is fine. If I shake it, it doesn't usually come out and just dangle by the strap here, and the strap and the button have held up and really never failed me or caught on anything or been problematic, despite the kind of weird ways that I hang the knife. But I don't like that it didn't come with, seems like a missed opportunity anyway, to not come with the belt loops to carry it horizontally, which is how I personally prefer to carry this knife, on my belly, hung to the right, so that I can deploy it with my right hand easily. As I noted before, I augmented this sheath with some shoelace that I poked through in a few places to make belt loops so that in the summer, when I have a belt on and pants where I can get at it, I can carry it across my belly horizontally or across my back if I choose. In the winter, though, which is what it is 10 months of the year where I live, I put it on a strap here and I can drape it across my coat quickly. It's easy to take on and off, and it hangs over, baggy gear pretty easily, and then just hangs over my coat. Usually I can get it to sit and rest on my chest, but it usually inevitably starts hanging underneath my teat, and it's easy to deploy in this location. So if it ends up hanging here, I can get at it, I can deploy the knife, do all the things that I need to do. This lanyard is big enough to go over gloves. The knife is still comfortable, retainable in gloves. This jimping doesn't irritate me if I'm wearing big, thick gloves, but it's still maneuverable. In the winter, though, that tang being exposed, you certainly feel where the cold bits are. It doesn't freeze to your hand like the cold steel drop forge knife that I have, but you will certainly feel it in a bare hand. Not that you can't feel the cold in a bare hand, but holding this popsicle is not necessarily a fun thing either. Anyway, it has been a joy. I've really enjoyed owning this knife. It was $100, I think well spent, and it's given me some idea of the types of knives that I like more. The big belly on this is a little bit more. I still like the shape. I really don't have any complaints. If I could change anything, honestly, it might be buying the rosewood version of it. I think it would have aged a little bit better. I think I would have liked it a little bit more over time, but I digress. I still have really enjoyed the Buck Alpha Hunter. I still really enjoy the size of blade. I still really enjoy drop tip knives. But the grip has not aged with me particularly well. The sheath, there are better options that come without shoelaces on them to retain them that hold better. And so this knife still sees a lot of carry and use, but that's just because it's so beat up that I'm not worried about it. I'm so used to using it. It's an old friend at this point, but it's certainly not my favorite anymore. There's certainly pros and cons. It's just not a particularly glamorous knife, I guess, anymore. But it's still an old favorite, still something that I don't see myself not using until I eventually drop it down an ice fishing hole and can't buy another one. Maybe then I'll try the spacey new Alpha Hunter. Maybe. Probably not, though, but maybe. Anyway, hopefully this has been an interesting video. Let me know if you like this kind of knife-related content, if it's helpful to see. It seems like there is a plethora of other knife reviewers that have more information, and I don't know what I'm adding to the conversation other than blabbing into the camera. But if it's stuff that you like to see, I do like knives and can babble more about them. So that's all I've got. Cheers, and thanks for watching.